Thank you. Thank you. So I think that gives a good overview, and it's a very good background upon which to invite up Reverend Dr. David Hanna, who will be giving the presentations today. So please welcome up Reverend Dr. David Hanna. He's been a regular presenter here, and you're the North Region President for UPF and Family Federation. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you, all those from London, all those from Birmingham. Who's that? Put your hands up. What a wonderful journey this morning you made. Thank you so much for your effort, and those who've come even from Scotland are here and elsewhere, joining us on Zoom or Facebook as well. Thank you very much for coming and being part of this seminar. So I hope you're all ready. I hope you can follow my English, and you're all looking so bright and so kind of eager. It's wonderful to see. Thank you so much. So yes, this purpose of this seminar is to go more deeply into the thought or the teaching of Father Moon, which is applied in many different areas, of course. These are not ideas you have to subscribe to become a person working with UPF, because UPF is a non-confessional organization, and we welcome people of all faiths and no faith, and anybody who is focused in their life with sincerity to contribute to the betterment of society and to what we could simply call world peace. We really see it as a wonderful vehicle for working together and bringing like-minded people together. So I hope for that reason you really enjoy today. You enjoy meeting new people, and you enjoy the lunch together. We'll have a presentation. I'm not the only presenter, I'm very glad to say. We have a presentation from Dr. David Earle towards the end as the last one of four. So, 4 presentations. Most universities, certainly in London, do 5 lectures a week, right? So you're doing a very intense course today, and voluntarily, I presume, you're coming here to give up your Saturday and to focus on this kind of special, I don't call it education maybe, but information, more than information. I mean, we want to share on a level of heart and discuss certain fundamental things about values and where we might be able to contribute, each of us and everything. So, you know, we are on this journey together. This first session I've entitled Universal Values as a Foundation for World Peace. And I start with something always a little bit unusual, just to think about where we are. Can you see yourself there? No. This view of our beautiful planet was not available to humankind in most of our history. It's only quite recently we could turn back and take this kind of picture of a very beautiful planet. It always reminds me that there are no borders or lines that are visible from space. Well, they say the Great Wall of China might be there, but there are no borders between countries. It's one world, and one of our slogans is one family loved by God. So we want to work for that ideal. But when you look at a political map on your schoolroom wall, you see it's all divided into different colors, isn't it? And little boxes, and different states and different countries. So just a reminder that we are one. This is a more interesting graphic, I think, an unusual one. This I like to show because it shows a delicate balance of this world. Can you guess what that blue marble is in the middle of a rather dry-looking earth? It's actually all, if you took all the surface water that exists, the oceans, the lakes, the seas, the rivers, everything that's on the surface of the earth, and rolled it into one ball, that's the size it would be. To be always surprisingly small, right? And it shows how delicate that is. Of course, the reason is, to us, oceans are very deep, but compared to the diameter of the world, they're not deep at all. Right? They're just a very shallow kind of little wrinkles in the surface. So that explains that. So how we have to look after this world, and that's, of course, a key principle of Universal Peace Federation that we'll be looking at a little bit later. I do have a kind of caveat or a little kind of explanation first of all, just to let you know. In this first talk particularly, I'm talking about, we could call it an original plan for humankind, or an original ideal, and unashamedly so. We feel it's very important to have an understanding and a grasp of that ideal, because it's what we want to aim towards. We want to get back to a kind of original concept and living as one world family loved by God. So we need to understand that more deeply and be aware of it. But I'm also freely referring to God and religious concepts. Why is that? Well, because this is what Father Moon did his whole life, with a very broad and eclectic mind to embrace people from different faiths. And considered himself, I think, almost to be a person of all faiths, and somebody who was bringing some unique contribution through reason and revelation. So he had a lifetime experience of that, and I'm passing on his view and his understanding. So that's why I'll be talking in those terms, which, for the majority of UPF events, we probably wouldn't be. But this is the purpose of today's seminar. And finally, I'm not implying any judgment on people who think or choose to behave differently to the examples that I'm giving. I just want to lay this out before you and make it as understandable as possible so you're aware of it. I'll start with a quotation from the founder. You saw there on the video the kind of founding of this Universal Peace Federation, 2005. He said, "Religions should be concerned with God's will for world salvation more than with the salvation of the individual or the welfare of their own denomination. As far as I know, God is not sectarian," he said. "He is not obsessed with minor details of doctrine, and we should quickly liberate ourselves from theological conflict, which results from blind attachment to doctrines and rituals, and instead focus on living communication with God. In God's parental heart and his great love, there is no discrimination based on color or nationality. There are no barriers between countries or cultural traditions, between East and West or North and South. Through inter-religious dialogue and harmony, we should realize one ideal world of peace." He was particularly focusing on interreligious dialogue there because it was at an assembly of the world's religions in 1985 that he convened and brought together so many representatives of almost every faith you could imagine. So does religion have its own significant contribution to make? That's a first question to ask, why we might be talking about this at all. Personally, you may have your own view, but how do we present that to a wider society? Well, certainly true, genuine religious practice seeks to restore peace and promote certain things, certain values which are important. Humility in front of God and respect to parents, fidelity in marriage, loyalty and public service, various virtues are championed and very much the stuff of religious teaching and stories that are there to pass it on to the next generation. It also provides a way for personal discipline and sacrifice and control of physical desires. It's a strong common emphasis amongst the world religions. It teaches such things as restraint and patience and forgiveness in relationships, and also is there to encourage others to love each other as we should love ourselves in the right way. And finally, love of neighbors and even of one's enemies, to be able to disarm the kind of enmity which is there and provide a different way towards lasting peace. Personally, I like this little quotation from the Holy Quran, and I will scatter a few interreligious quotations around my talks today, if that's okay for you. This is very much in the spirit of UPF. Here in the Holy Quran it says, "Prayer restrains one from shameful and unjust deeds, and remembrance of God is the greatest thing in life, without doubt." Really reinforcing the very kind of ideas that I was sharing earlier about the contribution, the religious life, when enacted and practiced genuinely, what it can make, what can contribute. There's always, in everything that goes on in our life, there's a human factor, especially in international activities and relations. So for that, the integrity of individuals is key, wouldn't you say? Yes. Absolutely. So we have to think about this. And one thing that UPF does, I think quite importantly, is connect, like peace in the individual with the importance of the family, with the notion of world peace, and saying we can't get to world peace without considering these other two important areas, which are sometimes overlooked in the kind of haste to reach international agreements and things like that. So it's people that make decisions in the end, right? And that's what we all find ourselves doing one way or another. So what's informing those decisions is important, and people's character is very much shaped by their experiences and by their influences, and religious upbringing is one very strong aspect of that. Therefore, we need to consider its contribution. Well, here's just a smattering of the kind of symbols of different world religions. If yours is not included there, please forgive me. It's just a representative sample. Right? We can look to values that are common to the world's great religions and philosophies, and we will find a lot that's in common, actually, and that's very helpful for us and should be a uniting factor. Here we're presenting unification principles of peace, or unification principles, go under various names. It's all relating back to Father Moon's own teaching and its different expressions. What does it provide? Actually, it has certain things that it mentions even in its introduction of the main text. It says it's a new expression of religious truth for our age, a new expression. Religious truth is age old, and truth is beyond any teaching or any book. It opens the way for a harmonized view of religion and science, which is very necessary and appropriate for the time that we're living in. We're going through a technological and scientific revolution and reaping benefits of that, also facing challenges. It identifies universal values that are present in major world faiths, and it also reveals God as a God of heart. I'll explain that a little bit more later, but identifies clearly the importance of human responsibility in making the sort of changes that we are hoping to see, and also provides understanding for tackling real problems. Today we're focusing more on the theory or on the teaching, on the idea side of things, rather than the solution to practical problems, which may be, in their great diversity, a topic for a UPF talk or UPF evening or some other peace event which is structured within our very varied program. But as I said, we're going more to the founding ideas today. So please understand where that is coming from. And as I mentioned earlier, Father Moon's teaching combines aspect of revelation. He was a person who was, sometimes people call it spiritually open, very open, and able to commune with the spiritual realm, although he didn't advertise that a lot. He just had that ability, and it guided him and helped him right from his first encounter with Jesus when he was 15 years old. As quite a young boy, actually, and had to keep those things very much in his heart for many years. So we start by looking at the nature of God through this new lens, if you like, and new aspects of revelation and reason. And the unification principles outline that if we talk about God at all, then the nature of God is such that God has an internal character, and that internal character giving rise to a God of personality contains aspects of emotion, intellect, and will, three kind of major faculties that come, through to human beings. We all are aware of this. And also concepts and laws which are at work universally in certain ways throughout the universe. So there's a structure there, and that has its origin in the nature of God. Also, we talk about the external form of God in this teaching. So I put form in inverted commas because, of course, we think quite rightly that God is without form. You can't see, or we can't treat it like any physical form, but it's the kind of prior aspect out of which all things that have form emerge. So they emerge from something or some aspect within God himself. We call it original energy, something like a prior energy before we see energy at work and moving in the world, even on the atomic level. And then there's this aspect in the very center. Of course, it's presumptuous, isn't it, to make a diagram of God? I'm sorry. I hope you're not offended by that. But we're just trying to understand the kind of, this fundamental picture right here. And in the center, you could say, in terms of values and meaning, is this aspect of heart. It's a translation of a Korean word. The movement obviously originated from Korea. And this Korean word, shimjung, is something, including my beloved wife tells me, it's deeper than what we might translate as love, or we're using the word heart here. And what is it? Well, heart, we could say, is the impulse to experience joy through giving and receiving love. So it's something that gives rise to love itself. Have you ever thought of that? Ever thought of what might give rise to love? Something very fundamental there, an impulse to experience joy through that process. And as such, then, it's the source of motivation for creating. It's why God creates in the first place. It's why an artist creates. And very appropriately, we're surrounded by art today. So, there's something moving in the human spirit to want to do that. And it's stronger in some people than others. But we can take creativity as a very broad, kind of multifaceted thing. And in that, you're all creative people, right? In your own way, you're doing something creative, I'm sure. It's also the source of meaning. This aspect of heart gives meaning to things, and it's the very core of human nature. So in this respect, God is the first cause, our creator, and has within himself, and some people would add herself, God is the source of internal character and external form that we see in the world, because those aspects are within God. They must come from somewhere when we see them in the universe. Also, plus and minus represent here on the diagram masculinity and femininity. They both have their source in God as a harmonized being of unified dual characteristics of masculine and feminine, of internal character and external form. So this means it becomes the origin of the internal character of everything, and the origin of the external form of everything. Also, God is the origin of the masculine nature of everything and origin of the feminine nature of everything. And interestingly, when things are manifested in the created world, we see that there's a kind of clearer division there, say, between masculine and feminine, so that they can work together and unite and then go to the next level. How are you doing? Everybody all right? Are you with me? Yes. I just have to check every so often, right? If I'd lost you all at the first few sentences. Great. Believe it or not, I'm a very shy person, and I don't say much. But somehow I get put on this high chair here, and I have you hear me spouting for quite a lot, and I apologize for that, but I try my best. Right? So within this, then, there's a beautiful system in the universe. It's universal. It's a pair system, giving and receiving between what we call subject and object pairs. And a subject is subject because that's initiating. An object we call object because it's responding. Although in, like, human relationships, this is a very dynamic system, right? It's really, swapping between subject and object all the time. So, for example, in a conversation, for a conversation to go well, you need a common purpose that you are kind of sharing together with another person. And the person who speaks first is the subject. While they're speaking, the other person has to be object. So we have to learn how to be subject and how to be object. And you should be listening to what is being said to you. And then it's your turn to speak, and you become the subject, and it's the other person's turn to listen, right? This is very basic. But even though it's basic, sometimes people don't do it, right? Have you ever had a conversation with somebody where you just, after a little while, you wonder, are they listening to me? Right? Are they listening? And you kind of get an indication that maybe they're not, because even though you say something that you think is pretty good, right? And a helpful contribution, but then the next thing they say is only related to what they said before. It's not altered or changed or developed by what you said. So learning this is actually very important, right? I was put in classes as a religious education teacher at secondary school in Greenwich, where the head of department said, "Don't try to initiate any conversation with these kids. It won't work." Right? Can you imagine? So where are they going to learn? Where are they going to learn? They don't learn it at home. There's probably a lot of shouting at home. That was the implication. So anyway, this is why these principles, these ideals are very important, and they're very applicable. Even when we think about, on another occasion, we might think about conflict resolution or something. It's going to involve good principles of dialogue and listening to each other, isn't it? Right? So this is why. This is underpinning a lot of the things that we are doing and talking about. So here are some subject-object pairs that may resonate with you. Mind and body. Every person has a mind and a body. They relate together. Mind should be subject over the body and not the other way around. Right? So that's a kind of subject-object relationship. I've already mentioned speaker and listener, but that's dynamic because then it's like listener and speaker. And then we have husband and wife relationship, or you can say that that's also wife as subject and husband in the object position. So these are, object is not denigrating in any way. It's just a label to show which is the more initiating, which is the more responding at any moment. And, in a home, a wife has certain areas where she is very definitely the subject, right? And also, a husband has some areas where he is maybe overall the subject. But at any time, you need to be very much enjoying the give and take and the swapping of these positions to produce, what does it produce? It produces all the forces which are necessary for existing, multiplying, and acting. Amazing, isn't it? And in nature, all of these pairs that we see, everything that exists is in such pairs, and it relates centering on a common purpose. When people relate or discuss, but their purpose isn't really in common, then you don't get anything so constructive coming out of it. If one person has their own agenda and the other person has their own agenda, you're not going to be able to develop something in common. So God's energy is in everything. I represent that by these little green arrows, if you can see them. That's this idea of prime energy or God's external form, or prior to forms in the universe. And when God generates or manifests in subject-object pairs, that same energy is encouraging the subject to interact with the object and encouraging the object to respond to the subject. So there's kind of energy at work constructively within any little system like this. So it's moving all of these pairs to form a common base for their mutual relationship and mutual benefit, actually. And it encourages unity between those subject-object pairs. Why? To create something greater, So husband and wife relating together well can produce the thing that we call the family, actually. And that's an essential part of that. And our relationship together is more kind of advanced and developed than, us individually or separately. So it's creating something on the next level. That's the importance of these relationships. And this is the basis for God's eternal existence as well. So relationships, and I would say Reverend Moon's theology is a relational theology in that respect. It's talking fundamentally from the start about relationships. Harmonious interaction, then, of subject and object pairs leads to what? It leads to the things that we value most: love, truth, beauty, goodness. This is the product of these interactions. Is that good or is it good?
Very good.
Wonderful. I think it's good. And, even according to these insights, God needs an object, we could say, or someone in the object position to love, a partner to love. And God, as a God of heart in a subject role, is loving human beings. And how do we respond? Well, the response to love is beauty, actually. So, but how do we show ourselves to become beautiful to the eyes of God? It's not going to be physical beauty, is it? Although that's also nice to see. It's going to be something to do with our inner self, qualities such as humility and honesty, or trustworthiness, or faithfulness and loyalty. These things are important. Or filial piety is quite an important aspect in Oriental culture as well, and maybe should be in all of our cultures. So, God needs such an object. Traditionally, in the Christian world, for example, we've thought man needs God, but God doesn't need human beings in that sense. This is saying it's different, because love can't exist without a relationship. It can't work without a relationship, actually. You can't experience the joy that you get through that give and receive of love without an object to love. So that's why our world is a world of complementary pairs, we can say. And here's just a few examples. Even the plus and minus of electricity that causes lightning and dramatic things like that. You get male and female, even in the stamen and pistil of a flower. You get male and female in the animal kingdom, like these very contented-looking lions. And you get the kind of high points of culture. And in ballet, it's often considered the moment when the prima donna and the main male dancer dance together. This pas de deux, did you call it? I can't remember. I was never a ballet dancer, so. But that's when it really generates all the kind of energy and excitement and beauty, right? When you see these two complementary aspects that kind of benefit from interacting with each other. So we see, therefore, there's a certain foundations for our lasting peace and happiness that come based on the kind of system or the outline which I've presented. The first is individual peace. It all starts there. Peace starts with me in this respect. And there is, I've used the term God here, but if somebody's uncomfortable with that, I would say centering on higher values or a higher purpose, then the subject-object relationship of mind and body need to have some good give and receive action, right? They're working together, and they're centering on a common purpose and higher values, and that will produce a person of integrity, a person whose words associated with the mind match their deeds associated with the body. So you're actually becoming a person of integrity. Religiously speaking, you can say you become a person in whom the Spirit of God is dwelling, or even incarnation in that way. And God can be in you and working through you in that respect. You become God's temple and a holy place and a holy person. So if you can think of any example from your tradition of a holy person, that would mean their mind and body are working very well together, right? In this way, centered on these very insightful and deep common purpose coming from the Creator. So mind-body unity and integrity is part of this individual structure, and a person needs to grow. This is largely what should be our kind of 21-year course of development from baby to adult, is to develop spiritual maturity and not just physical maturity. Sometimes not enough emphasis is given to that spiritual development, but every human being has the potential for that and should be exercising that as well. And in doing so, we develop our spiritual sensitivity. We become more of such a dwelling place of God. And then we're able to give, we say, true love, true, genuine, altruistic love, and receive true love. So that's something that we have to learn to do, and that's part of our education. We have to then think, where does that education come from, or where are we going to find that education? So, as we said, people of integrity, people who fulfill that first kind of foundation of peace, that's very important. And those people can contribute and end up contributing to building a peaceful or ideal world when you study such people, becoming a responsible individual with integrity and developing a heart of love towards others. It's possible for everybody to do that, right? Every person has that potential. Not just these kind of more saintly characters that we identify we're totally in support of them, I don't know, but they're examples that as a religious education teacher you're always urged to tell your little eager children about, right? There's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi. Not everybody's a saint or hero, but okay, people who have contributed to the important kind of development in this area. So the second foundation of lasting peace and happiness is not only that development of one's own spiritual maturity, but it's then on the basis of that, bringing that into the next phase of life, which is marriage and then family, so that you can experience more broadly other types of love, actually, than you could do as a single person, and your heart can grow still more. So again, centering on higher values or a higher purpose, or a shorthand for religious believers is God. Then husband and wife can unite together, and they can create the environment and the necessary conditions to give rise to children, and those children can feel that they are looking to their mother and father, and when they look to their mother and father, who should they see? They should see God, actually, in their mother and father. They shouldn't have to go as a teenager on a long journey, all around the world with a backpack, trying to, discover themselves and what's important and have spiritual experiences and experiment with this and that. No. It should be so natural, right, to learn these things within the family, but it's not always possible, right? There's not always that kind of standard of love in the family, unfortunately. But if children can learn it in that environment, then it becomes a kind of model, a basic building block for expansion to the wider extended family, the society in which they are, including their schools or their workplaces, the nation, and eventually the world. And the family, as I said, is like the building block for all of this. It's, even more so than the individual. It's really crucial and essential. And I think we've lost sight of that in our current society. We've lost sight of the value of the family, and we need to reevaluate and we need to rediscover those things, because it's been distorted. And, we have to, again, this is where the ideal comes in, because if our experience is a very difficult and painful one, then it's not a model we want to uphold or offer to anybody else. But that's just a tragedy, actually, and it means that the family starts to break down and there's nothing to pass on to the next generation in that sense. So any being, we'll find, is interdependent in this world and created to exist through these kind of reciprocal relationships. And Father Moon talked a lot, I mean a lot. He talked about true love, so much, true love. Now that, when he used that term, it wasn't like a Disney-like romantic relationship or something, True love meant something. And I found a definition of it. Of course, logically, one would go to Father Moon, but I thought, well, let's find where someone else is talking about the same thing in the same way. It comes from American psychologist, Greg Bear. I don't know if you've come across his work. And he says there, true, genuine love, which is what we're talking about, is unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. I like that because you can just remember it, right? You can quickly learn it. Very concise. I would agree with that. I'm happy with that myself. True, genuine love is unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. This would be parental love or a mother's love to her child, very obviously. But that should be the quality of love that we exercise, not only in romantic relationships, but every relationship should be a give and receive of love, right? We are reluctant to talk about that word, love, and not sure always what to say about it, right? So, some couples go through many years where they haven't said simple words like, I love you, right? And if you as a prime minister or president of a country started saying we need to exercise true love, people say, what's gone crazy? What's wrong with this person, right? But it's what we need, right? Absolutely. Unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. If we all started to do that, problems, as we recognize them, would disappear, actually. And we all have the potential for that. So where do we learn about this true love, by this definition, right? Well, it's from our parents. Parents are our first teachers, and the family, as another kind of UPF slogan, is the school of love, right? So nurturing heart and character, it's there to be the primary training ground, we say, for relationships. That means, we go through those ups and downs and little growing pains in the family, where we're always supported, ideally, And then that means we can go out beyond the family as we, mature, and we can engage with others outside in the wider world. And it should be a training ground for exercising love in relationships, even though maybe we're not used to calling it love. I mean, conducting our relationships with that kind of heart. Are you with me? Yes. Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for following this. And where do we learn true love? Well, in relating to brothers and sisters in the family. Of course, not every family is like that. Like I said, this is ideal. Some are, single-parent families, through no fault of anybody. Or they are one-child families. They don't have brothers and sisters. So in that case, we have to kind of substitute, right? And we have to find people who can be like our brothers and sisters, whom we can love in that same way and exercise our love, right? So that's all right. We can make do. Humans are tremendously resourceful, right? So we'll find a way to do that. But first of all, we need to know what we're aiming for. So in this thinking, the family then is the school of morality. It's setting in place the basis for societal norms that are going to be practiced by a young person as they become an adult in the world, and the proper conduct with the wider world, or children when they're at school, or interacting kind of away from the home. It's still the same. It all needs to be learned and supported by behavior and this kind of education, inner education at home. We learn true love as well as husband and wife. And that's our kind of joy, to see God in our partner, to be able to see God in the other, and to therefore create something together which is greater than the separate parts. And the couple, in that way, becomes more of a true image of the Creator than any single person, because God is the origin of masculinity and femininity, of mother's love and father's love. Where do those things come from? They must come from the same source. So it's living for each other and the family and the wider world, and it's a model of true love to children. So when children see this in the parents, it's a very, very good education without words, right? It's the best education to see loving parents and parents caring for each other. So how wonderful that is. And as husband and wife grow older in this kind of environment, they can more fully express that love. And even they say, maybe it's true of this couple, I don't know, that as you grow older in love, you start to look like each other. Anybody testify to that?
Yes.
Oh, yes? Wonderful. David and Tina, you starting to look like each other a little bit? Yes. After one conference, my wife is Korean, right? Somebody came up to me and they said, it's nice to meet you. By the way, are you Korean? I thought, it must be working. It must be working, right? I was very happy to hear that. So the family living for society and the nation and the world, is a family that has a focus higher than itself. That's important, because the message here is not just each family for itself, but the family itself has to be practicing altruistic love, true love, has to be living for something higher than itself, or a wider scope in that way. And that's also part of children's education, because when they see the parents doing that, that's important for them. It means I should do that too when I grow up, right? And I should be able to think outside of my own family and not concerned about, certainly not just about my own happiness and not about my own family's happiness, but I have to go beyond that. So Father Moon talks about these as the four great loves experienced and learnt within the family: child's love, siblings' love, spouse's love, and parents' love. Four great loves, or four great realms of heart, which is a lovely expression, isn't it? Realms of heart. They're all being learnt and experienced, and we have to grow in those areas. Here he is talking about this very topic. He said, in the family there are four levels: grandfather and grandmother, that's one level, father and mother, you and your spouse, and your sons and daughters. The world is the extension of these relationships. Thus, you need to love the people of the world whose ages are similar to the people in your family, in the same way as you love your family members. Right? There's expansion of that, isn't it? And you'll find similar things said in different traditions of the world's religions as well. Living for others is a common theme. Here in the Holy Quran, it's saying, do not expect in giving any increase for yourself. Kind of give unconditionally, in other words. In Christian New Testament, in Luke 17, Jesus says, whoever seeks to gain his life will lose it. So if you have a kind of self-centered outlook, you'll end up losing life in a way. But whoever loses his life, you just kind of give it away to others. You'll preserve it. It's an interesting kind of paradox almost, right? But just to get people to think about this. Natural tendency as people who are maybe distant from God is to just focus on myself. We have this awful expression in English, looking after number one. Have you come across that? Oh, I hate to hear that, right? Looking after number one, like that's, I have to look after number one. In Korean, number one is Hanna. It's my name, actually. So, anyway. Here, from Hinduism, in the Bhagavad Gita, of sacrifices, the sacrifice performed by those who desire no reward is the nature of goodness. Oh, wow. How beautifully expressed. In Zoroastrianism, radiant happiness comes to the person to whom righteousness is for the sake of the best righteousness alone. That's the only reason I'm doing it. Or in Sikhism, what is that love which is based on greed? Where there is greed, the love is false. Later on, I'll give you a definition of false love to go with your definition of true love, which you can remember now, right? So the third and final kind of foundation for lasting peace and happiness is our relationship with the natural world. So once again, centering on higher values or a higher purpose, or centering on God as creator from which everything comes, then people should interact with the natural world in a harmonious way, in a responsible way. And that harmony of people and nature can be evident in true ownership and responsible stewardship of human beings for the beautiful world around us, right? That was our first picture, that beautiful planet, blue planet floating in space. And this is a dominion through love. It requires care for the environment, encourages material prosperity for all, so we share in these blessings. It involves also harnessing the benefits and developments of science and technology for mutual benefit of all people, and ensuring that the natural world is there for future generations and not exploited through greed or misuse. So true ownership is responsible stewardship. Then let's think about this third foundation of peace. Interestingly, in the writings of St. Paul, who was a great contributor, of course, to Christian thinking, he said, the creation waits with eager longing for what? For the revealing of the sons and daughters. He meant to say that. In the time he didn't say that, but he wouldn't say no to that. For the revealing of the sons and daughters of God, right? So it's like even nature is suffering because there are no people exercising true love. It's a very profound thought for 2,000 years ago, isn't it? Right? Or something like that. And in the midst of a kind of Roman Empire with doing what it's doing, it's quite extraordinary. So we all want to do good, don't we? Yes. That's why we're here, right? To do good, three things have to line up. You have to have a good motivation, right? That's a kind of reason for setting out or you're getting up in the morning, right? Your motivation has to be good. But not only that, you need a good endpoint or goal, a good purpose. And if you have that, that even is not enough. You need something to connect those two. The unification principle uses a term direction. The direction has to be good. And I take that to mean what you do has to be done well morally and ethically. You know, it's not a case of the end justifies the means. We have to, put these three things in a line. And if you do that, you're very free to do all kinds of things. And in all things, you'll be pursuing beauty, truth, and goodness. How wonderful, right? And that's what we want to say. That people do have an idea that religious teaching is kind of restrictive. It's full of don'ts and, giving up things and, not dancing, not singing, No. Well, maybe for some people for some time it's like that, but we have to get beyond that. We have to, even UPF, one of its slogans or bylines is beyond nationality or beyond international, I think, and beyond religion. That doesn't mean ignoring religion, obviously, from what I'm sharing with you, but going beyond kind of anything that turns into a barrier, right? To live life naturally in love together. So how well that is. When we put this together, what do we get? Well, if you're coming from, especially from the religions of the book, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, or in any way familiar with the Old Testament, you may recognize in these three foundations what we call the three great blessings. It's there just as one simple verse. It says here in Genesis 1:28, the first book of the Judeo-Christian Bible, then be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the earth. That's all it says, right? But this is God's blessing to us for our happiness. So when you look at this structure again, yes, I'm talking about peace, and that is what it produces in the heart, and then in the family, and then in the world. But you can think of this as being fruitful. The second blessing is multiplying, with a lot more explanation, right? And the quality of that, and having dominion is the third. So in this way, the three great blessings are, iterated through certain central figures in the Old Testament history. It's interesting. It's like a formula given for our happiness. So if you look at this system, really there's nothing you would want for your happiness that is not there. I challenge you, right? And, that's important, right? To realize. And that means tied up in this, or this is a way of expressing our purpose or our reason for existing. How many people are struggling because they don't understand the purpose of life or purpose of their life, or even they want to give up on life. So we need to know why we're here, for what were we created, and what is the way to find happiness. We find that happiness when we live in accordance with those principles for which we were created. And that's our connection with the Creator as well. So that's my little opening talk, everybody. With that, I want to end here. And Robin, what do you suggest we do next? Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
So we have a few minutes before lunch, just about 10 minutes. Sorry? How long?
1 hour.
Sorry? 1 o'clock. So lunch is at 1 o'clock, okay? 12:30. Okay. Yeah. So let's make some little groups. If You can make a group with some of the people around you, and then we have a time of discussion, okay, just to share. So please take your own initiative to make a little group with the people around you.
Move your chairs or turn your chairs. Don't worry, we'll strip them out. And if you're in a group that you came with, maybe you consider mixing, you know? Like, you'll have a chance, just as you feel, just a chance to meet somebody new.
Recording stopped.